For years, Emily lived a quiet and uneventful life in a small coastal town. She worked as a barista at a quaint cafe near the beach, a place she had grown to call home. Her life was structured. Wake up early, brew coffee for the regulars, clean the cafe, read a book on her break, and repeat. It was a comfortable routine, and Emily liked it that way. She didn't have many friends, preferring the solitude of her own thoughts to socializing. Everything seemed predictable and safe. But little did she know, everything was about to change in a way she never expected. One Saturday afternoon, the sun was high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the beach. The weather was perfect, warm enough to enjoy the ocean breeze, but not too hot. Emily was at work, standing behind the counter, slowly flipping through a novel she had been reading for weeks. The cafe was quiet, with only a few customers scattered around, lost in their own conversations or enjoying the peaceful ambiance. Then, a man walked in. He was unlike anyone Emily had seen before. He wore a long, gray coat, even though it was warm outside, and his hair was messy, as if he had just gotten off a long, exhausting journey. He looked tired, but somehow carried an air of mystery around him. His eyes seemed to hold stories that were too deep to express in words. He glanced around the cafe, scanning the room before his eyes landed on the counter where Emily stood. "Excuse me," he said in a voice that was deep but soft. "Could I have a black coffee, please?" Emily, who was used to dealing with a steady flow of customers, nodded and began preparing the coffee without much thought. There was something about the man, though, something that intrigued her. It wasn't just his appearance, but the energy he exuded, something raw and honest, yet quiet. As she handed him his coffee, he smiled faintly. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Emily replied, but she wasn't expecting the conversation that followed. The man looked at her for a moment, as if deciding whether to say something more. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying a quiet weight. "Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a routine? Like you're just going through the motions of life and nothing ever changes?" Emily was taken aback. She wasn't used to people opening up to her like that, especially strangers. She paused for a moment, then shrugged, trying to keep the conversation casual. "I don't know. I guess life feels pretty predictable sometimes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I like routine." The man nodded, his eyes darkening slightly. "I get it. But have you ever wondered if there's more to life than just living each day the same way? Don't you ever wonder what it would be like to break free from that cycle?" Emily was quiet. She hadn't ever really thought about it like that. Sure, life had become routine, but that was something she had grown used to. It felt safe, comfortable even. But now that he mentioned it, she couldn't help but wonder if she was missing out on something. "I guess I've never really thought about it," she said honestly. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Sometimes we get so caught up in the comfort of our routines that we forget to live. We forget to take risks, to step outside of our comfort zones. The thing is, life doesn't wait for us. It keeps moving forward, with or without us." Emily blinked, taken aback by his words. She didn't know why, but something about his tone struck a chord deep inside her. She had always been afraid of change. Her entire life had been built around the idea of safety, avoiding risks, staying within her boundaries. The thought of stepping outside her comfort zone had always seemed too daunting, too unpredictable. The man took a sip of his coffee, as if he had said what he needed to say. For a moment, they just stood there in silence. Emily looked down at the counter, lost in thought. The words he had spoken were simple, but they were also profound. Could it be true? Had she been living in a bubble, too afraid to venture out into the world and truly experience life? After a few moments, the man stood up, ready to leave. He turned to Emily one last time, his eyes meeting hers. "Remember," he said softly, "don't let fear hold you back from living your life. You don't have to have everything figured out, but you do have to take the first step. Otherwise, you'll never know what you're missing." With that, he walked out of the cafe, leaving Emily standing there, feeling a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She stared at the door for a long time after he left, his words echoing in her mind. For the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about that brief encounter. His words had shaken something loose inside her, something she didn't even realize was there. She began to question her life, Why had she chosen to live in the same place, in the same routine, day in and day out? Was it because she was too afraid to take risks, to pursue something different? What was she really afraid of? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had been hiding from change her entire life. Fear had been the one thing holding her back. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of making mistakes. But she also realized that without taking those risks, she would never experience the fullness of life. So Emily made a decision. The very next week, she quit her job at the cafe. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't something she had planned, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She began looking for new opportunities, ones that challenged her, ones that pushed her out of her comfort zone. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she was no longer afraid to face it. That encounter with the stranger had changed everything for her. A single conversation, a few words of wisdom, had opened her eyes to a new way of thinking. Emily realized that the only way to truly live was to embrace the uncertainty of life, to take risks, and to be open to whatever came her way. She knew that from that moment on, she would never be the same. And for the first time in a long while, she was excited for what the future would bring. The stranger had been right. Life was waiting for her, and this time, she was ready to live it.